Dude, so I noticed that you have like a very nice bidet in your bathroom. I believe it's a
Oh.
Toto washlet.
You know, I hadn't even noticed that.
I'm just curious how your life has been changed with the presence of a Toto washlet bidet system.
It actually hasn't yet been changed, but you just changed it. I'm not gonna lie, I thought that was a toilet heater.
like it just heated the seat, or
Yeah, and I was like, why would you? Actually, I thought it would sound kind of nice, but I just
well,
hadn't yet engaged with that.
allow me to educate you on the virtues of the bidet, because
Oh, I've definitely used one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
that
It's
and
really
that
nice.
that's the Cadillac. The Toto washlet is the Cadillac of bidets. Yeah, I have a Tushy at my house, which it's one knob, cold water only. It's amazing. My bum has never been cleaner, but the Toto, I mean, that thing will like sing you a song. It'll oscillate. It'll warm water, cold water, front to back to front. Like that thing.
Dude, I have to
Maybe a
use
tickle
it.
at the end. Air
I hope
dry.
so. I have to use it now.
Yeah, dude, you got a whole. Boy, do I envy you.
You know what? This is a great opener. You took me by surprise with that one, and I like it.
I'm all about the surprise openings
Yeah.
to shows.
And have me looking pretty foolish, which I like. It's always nice to be humbled and realize the things you don't see that are right in front of you, which I think often happens to me, honestly.
Well, a great professor moves from the specific to the complex. And here on the Bartcast, we move from the foolish to the cool. So by the end, we'll have you looking like a G. Don't you worry one bit.
Foolish and cool are also not mutually exclusive, Sometimes you gotta be foolish to be cool.
It's true. I think cool and fool rhyme for a reason, Now, I think these days, like, the role of the jester has never been more important or apt. We witnessed this, like, explosion of comedy as being, like, comedians have never had so much attention or money thrown at them, or, it's kind of, there's these new rock star comedians. And I think, like, we're living at this time where there's so much social change, economic upheaval. Naturally, as a society, we gravitate towards, wanting people to step up and kind of explain it and also poke fun at the people in power. And
Yeah.
the fool is a very important position in any society, whether it's a tribe or a monarchy or, a democracy. You gotta be able to make fun of shit.
It's true. I think everyone in any circumstance can always use some relief. I think relief is one of the nicest feelings to feel. And comedy usually provides that.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when it's, relevant.
Yeah, and relief, great word, brings us back around full circle to the Toto washlet.
Sure does.
Nothing more relieving than...
I just used one actually for the first time in many years at a friend of mine's house. And it was a revelation.
A revelation.
Yeah. So
I feel like when I started using a bidet, it made toilet paper seem like barbaric.
Toilet paper is kind of barbaric though.
Yeah.
Or it's like the inverse, or it's like the modern version of barbaric. What do I mean?
Modern barbarism. I think.
I mean, it's just like it seems unnatural actually, which now I'm questioning what I thought barbarism meant, because I think maybe being a barbarian is kind of like being the most natural and primal.
Okay.
And using toilet paper isn't natural or primal.
Right. Leaves.
Right.
And stones.
Yeah. Or just let it ride. Jump in the river.
You ever have to, on a backpacking trip, you ever have to use the old stone trick? Sticks and stones?
No. I don't know the old stone trick.
Well, I mean, I've been up in the High Sierra before where either you have to like backpack out toilet paper and I don't want to carry it, or I'm just looking for an adventure. So you get really good at finding the smooth stones, and there's something about shitting at the top of a mountain with a beautiful view really grounds the soul, and the only problem with the rocks, I mean, except from the obvious abrasiveness, is some days if it's hot out, those stones that's can be a little more than you bargained for.
Yeah. To me that sounds really nice and like non-irritating, but it also sounds like it might lack a thoroughness.
It's true. You got to have a lake or a river to bidet yourself afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that's like a first step towards, a clean ass.
Yeah, which is really all we want out of life. I mean, when you think about it, been at a festy for 5 days. You just came back from Burning Man. Lots of dust.
Yeah.
I'm sure you experienced the festival crust, which every festy goer out there in the wide world is intimately familiar with.
Yes.
And how good is that first shower? That feeling of being so clean.
Yeah.
Take me to that moment. Getting back from Burning Man. What was that first shower like for you?
It was actually a first plunge in a river.
Okay.
On the way back from Burning Man in the Sierras. Very cold. So it was kind of like part of me almost wanted to not do that and wait so I could have the full post-Burning Man shower experience, but it was kind of broken up. But, the first shower was amazing. Hot shower. Indulgent. Very indulgent. Long time spent.
Did you look at your feet and see the color of the water running off you?
There was some color, probably not as extreme as people who hadn't jumped in a river, but yeah, I did get between my toes, which I don't do too often.
No.
I mean, I do it.
Do you neglect the feet when you shower?
It's like maybe a once every couple weeks thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Is that? I mean, yeah, I guess like my legs and my feet are probably like
just a little once over.
Well, I think it's like, I'll do a quick one, but once every couple weeks do I get in between my toes and scrub it up. I'm not trying to defend myself. I'm probably not the most thorough shower
except when you indulge.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's fun. Those habits are funny, like the things that you learn, like maybe your parents teach you a certain way when you're little, but then you get out into the wide world and we all develop our own systems of doing these things in private.
Yeah.
When I take a shower, I wash myself pretty much in the same order every time.
Yeah.
And if I break that, it feels super weird. Like I usually wash my face last, I do my feet, I do my toes, all that, but nobody taught me that. It's like for some reason, somewhere down the line, I decided this arbitrary order, and now if I break it, it feels weird,
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds really methodical because I actually, now that you say that, I've been realizing that in the shower, I don't have an order.
You're a free washer, freestyle.
Yeah, and lately I've been thinking, what makes more sense? And I think I've come to the conclusion that actually washing my face makes sense. It makes sense to wash my face first, rather than wash my junk and then my face, for example.
Right.
So wash, the thing that you want to be the cleanest maybe first, and then get towards the dirtier stuff. Something like that.
Head to toe.
Yeah. Can you take me through your quick order?
Sure, yeah. I mean, these days I don't really shampoo anymore. When I had hair your length, so I always start with my arms, do the armpits, chest, maybe a little back. My back's probably the most neglected. It's hard to reach all those hard-to-reach spots.
Yeah.
Then I do my belly, go down. I do the junk, the grundle, the rear. And then I feel like you're right. Like that's kind of the zone I want to wash I'm rinsing in between the sections.
Yeah.
But then to me, like I do my legs and my feet, and that kind of like refreshens my hands. Like something about my legs feels like whatever dark spirit from my package is like then relather, reapplied, you know. Then I'm ready for my face. And I think it's because traditionally, like I used shampoo and conditioner, and I would always want to do that at the end because I felt like if I did it in the beginning of the shower, I'd be like rinsing out a lot of the nutrients or whatever. Like if I had a conditioner, like I always felt like doing that at the end. And it also gives my hair time to get like fully wet and warm. Yeah. Similarly with my face, I feel like washing it at the end means that my face is getting more time for the pores to open under the warm water. And so it feels more appropriate to wash it at the very end. And it's kind of like the nice, last. It's almost like I'm saving the best bite of the pie for last. Yeah. Washing my face, that's like the special.
I actually can relate with that. Yeah. It's the most satisfying. Mm-hmm. I also use peppermint Dr. Bronner's. So it's just a nice, sting on the face.
Get those tingly balls.
Oh yeah, I love that.
It's an acquired taste, but it is quite nice.
It is, yeah. It was a bit intense at first, but it's subtle, honestly. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you need to see. It's like an indication that I'm being cleaned. It's like when a soap lathers, it's like an indication that it's working or that you're being cleaned. So like that sensation to me has come to signify like I'm clean because I've just used it for so long.
Yeah, that you really do feel fresh after that soap.
Yeah, yeah.
And I could see that being almost an addictive feeling.
Yeah.
Where if you're not getting the tingle, like did it really happen?
Exactly. And I've used dishwashing detergent, for example, that doesn't lather when you wash dishes with it. Just kind of more natural stuff. And I'm like...
You've used dish soap in the shower? Dish soap in the shower?
No, when I'm washing dishes.
Okay.
But like, you put some on with a sponge and there's no lather.
For sure.
I'm like...
So unsatisfying.
Yeah. I doubt how clean it's getting, but that's just...
I know what you mean. There's like a mysticism around soap and cleaning. I remember as a kid, like something about like the dishwashing machine. It might not always get the dishes cleaner, but the idea that I'm putting it in this magic box and a process is happening, to me in my child mind felt like, oh, the dish that comes out is cleaner. Yeah. When in reality, actually like washing by hand, a lot of times you're going to end up with a cleaner dish.
You think?
I think so. Well, maybe it's a bit of a trade-off because I know in the dishwasher it's getting hit with like crazy hot water for a sustained amount of time. Yeah. But then sometimes our dishwasher will leave like this weird, funky residue, and then we have to wash it by hand. Yeah.
It's one of those modern conveniences where it's like, how necessary is that? I mean, obviously not necessary at all, but I think I could do without. Yeah. And I have lived in places without dishwashers many times.
I will say I'm pretty strongly in the camp of necessary just because I think if you're living with people, to me, the mark of like one of the greatest metrics of how healthy a household is, like how much the house is functioning socially, is if you look at the kitchen sink. And I think that like dishwashers for communal living are one of the greatest inventions for keeping people from like cutting each other's throats. Because if you I've been in houses without it and those things stack up and then there's you didn't do your dishes. Yeah. I did it on Wednesday. You got, and being able to just stick it in a box.
It's true.
And all you got to do is press a button. To me, that's probably saved a lot of lives over the generations.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you have a dishwasher growing up in your house?
I love this topic. I did.
We cover all the important topics here.
Yeah, yeah. No, I did. I did have a dishwasher growing up. But my most recent living situation in Mexico was without a dishwasher. And was also my first time living alone. So that was cool because when the dishes stack up in your own sink, it's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, you did that. You can't get mad at anyone. I mean, you can get mad at yourself, but it's just kind of nice that was my first time ever living alone. So it was nice to just be able to be clean or be dirty.
Yeah. It's a liberating feeling when the only mess is your mess.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to really get in touch with like your own shit.
Yeah.
Both metaphorically and literally. And I think that, the brief moments in time, I'm going to shift a little bit because I'm in the sun. The brief moments in time that I have had the privilege of living alone feels so good to be like in control of the space.
Yeah.
And I think that it's also really good to work on, there's a lot of cool work to do when you also have to live socially with other people. Community settings. We all need a little mixture of both, I think.
Totally agree. Yeah.
I think keep going. I'm going to adjust this light real quick.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you actually.
Yeah.
Seeing as that we're on the topic, will you just tell the story of going to Mexico? Like what prompted it?
Yeah.
I've been curious personally.
Sure.
What your experience was like down there.
Yeah.
And just, I feel like it'd be a good tale to include in this episode.
I would be happy to. So December 2019, I was living in the Bay Area and decided to, a few months prior, decided to head out on a bike tour with my dear friend, Adley Penner. And Adley is an avid bike tour. He's a bike tour maniac, quite frankly. And
would you say that he's a chainiac?
I would, actually, now that you have introduced that term. Yes. Adley? Bicicletas por la Paz.
I know of the group, and I've probably seen him in a video or at a party, but I don't know if we've actually conversed.
Yeah, he's like one of those magical, special human beings who just... You can like really ride the Adley train.
A conductor.
And just kind of... Yeah, he's he's a free spirit. Anyway, so we went together on a bike tour down... we took our bikes and 2 street cubes, like battery-powered amps, a couple guitars, mic stand, and a couple mics, with the plan to busk in Mexico for a month or so. I didn't have a date that I needed to be back by. Adley did have to be back a few months later, but I was kind of like, I could very well be gone for a while. There was no like upper limit. So we hitchhiked with our bikes all the way down to La Paz, which is like Baja California, like maybe 3 hours from the bottom tip or so. And that's one of the points where you can cross over to the mainland on a ferry.
Did you go there because it was Bicicletas por La Paz?
No, that's actually the first time I ever thought about that, if you can believe that. Wow. No, but we stayed in La Paz for about a week, and we were busking as a rap / cumbia / like hip hop soul duo. Mm-hmm. Just kind of anything, both playing guitar. We were playing with tracks too, and we were rapping, and we called ourselves Los Gusanos Azules, which is the blue worms, because we both had blue sleeping bags. We were camping everywhere, and so during our performances, we would put the blue sleeping bags on and dance around like worms.
Hell yeah.
And rap like freaks.
Sick.
In Spanish and in English. And we wrote the songs. Adley actually wrote most of it, but we wrote a lot together too. And we were there this was December 2019, so we were there during like the holiday season, so it was just super bustling, and it's right on the water, so we had a great time busking and got some local gigs in town. And then we headed across on the ferry, busked on the ferry. All the equipment blew over in the wind, but we did it. And then continued our journey down the mainland and eventually wound up in San Pancho, which is where I ended up staying for 2.5 years, which is about an hour north of Puerto Vallarta in the state of Nayarit. Like jungle, tropical. San Pancho is a small town, about 2,000 people. Adley had been to the zone years before on a bike tour, because he's a bike tour maniac.
Mm-hmm.
And
a chainiac.
Yeah, a chainiac. Yeah, I like the term.
Kind of sounds like he's into Dick Cheney, which is not what I was going with. But
if you saw it spelled out, you'd get it though.
AI,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and so yeah, he, on our journey, he was basically like, we should get here because we wanted to get to the heat. It was December, and we wanted to get to like fun. It's like a small hippie town, surf town, 2,000-3,000 people. Yeah, so he was just like, you would love this place, let's go. And we wound up there. We got there together. We ended up staying there for 3 or 4 days, kept playing like shows every day. And then he left because he had to come back up here for a show with his band at the Starline in February. And I had stayed down because I was enjoying myself and didn't have anything to be back for. And that's essentially it. A pandemic struck about a month later. And at that point, I was like, okay, I've been here for a few months. I've met some friends. It doesn't make sense for me to travel. Small town Mexico seems like a pretty good place to be. And it really was pretty ideal to be there for that. Because I do feel like I missed out on the worst of the darkest part of the pandemic.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I escaped in 2021 to Costa Rica, and I was like going through a lot of those towns, meeting people in that situation who had like fled wherever country they were in.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'll just hang out on the beach.
Yeah, right? You start to, assess what's important in life.
Totally.
You start to maybe realize to a greater extent your agency in life. Your freedom. Yeah.
How was your Spanish when you arrived?
I would say I was fluent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I would say I was, comfortable, fluent. But still was, probably just lacking some like speed. And kind of just like the rhythm and pace of a native speaker I didn't have. But I think by the end of the 2.5 years there, I really felt like obviously no language will ever be more comfortable for me than English. But it was to the point where I just was hanging out with my friends and I wasn't thinking about the language, and it's such an amazing feeling to realize that just being able to connect with people in Spanish who I otherwise wouldn't be able to connect with in the same way, or to the same degree.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's a beautiful thing.
I feel like it's so interesting. One of the interesting things about making friends from other places where English is like maybe their second or third language, you get to know them as an English speaker if you don't speak their language.
Yeah.
And there's a whole person that's like, I remember like I had my ex, Camila, was from Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to know each other over a couple years, and her English got really good, and we had deep conversations, and I really felt like I knew her. But then I also realized that there was like this whole person inside that was like the Portuguese Camila that was able to, communicate in a very like even more beautiful, poetic, articulate way.
Yeah.
I remember when we broke up, I felt like this like kind of quiet sadness that I was never going to get to know that.
Yeah.
Portuguese is hard. I don't think I'll, maybe someday I'll learn it, but like,
Yeah.
I think about that, like every language is different too and changes your brain, and every language has a different way of structuring the world and
Mm-hmm.
structuring how you communicate. I think that's one of the beautiful things about learning a new language, or our friends in Europe or across the world that we envy who grow up with, 3 or 4 languages. Like, it's such a beautiful gift to be able to converse in different tongues.
It is. And the opposite of what you're describing is also a really cool thing. And what I mean is when you, for example, for me, when I meet someone in Spanish and I, am friends with them for many months in Spanish, and then I hear them speak in English for the first time, and it's like that's a really deep feeling of connection too, because it's like you're going out of your way to do what's less comfortable for you.
Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna adjust this so it's not covering your face.
Thanks.
There we go.
Hold on. Yeah, I think when you're speaking in your second language, can be a more vulnerable thing because it's something that's less comfortable for you. And so when my friends would, in many cases, I had friends who I didn't hear them speaking English for a long time, months, and when I finally heard that, it was like I'm instantly closer with you, because it's like, oh, this language that is me, really. And when I hear it, that's like, that's my home language,
Right. Yeah.
And so just when someone makes an effort, and I'm sure it's the same, for us making an effort in Spanish
Totally.
to them.
Yeah, this last trip, going to Guatemala, me and my brother, last month, this is now my 4th Spanish-speaking country in 4 years. So I'm starting to get to grasp the rudiments of the language to the point. I'm by no means fluent, but I can exist. I could survive in a Spanish-speaking country and navigate a market. I had a couple long car rides where I managed to keep a conversation going with someone that didn't speak English for the whole time, and that was a huge growth moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Through my broken, I'm saying things that are totally not grammatically correct, but I'm conveying meaning, which is the important thing. And I'm with my brother who speaks very little Spanish, and so this kind of relates to your point or whatever, but one of the things he commented on was just my personality of being able to be goofy and outgoing and not worry about, I really don't worry so much that I'm not speaking the language right.
Yeah.
To me, it's all kind of a fun game of hey, I'm going to try. I know this is mi español es malo, lo siento,
Yeah.
But the effort is there and the love is there. And to me, it's always this really kind of funny, joyful, levity, inspiring practice. And therefore, the people that I try to talk with, it's it's in that flavor. It becomes a really positive interaction because, I'm coming into it as this with like as a beginner. There's like a sense of humility, and then there's also like I'm putting in a lot of effort, which I find people really appreciate. But also because I don't have a lot of dimensions and ways that I can say things, there like nuance is a beautiful thing in language. When I speak English, there's always going to be a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
There's also more capacity for misunderstanding, but maybe like misunderstanding without knowing that you're misunderstanding. Like I might say something to another English speaker and you're going to take your own meaning out of it that may be very different.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to speak Spanish to you, you understand like, oh, this guy doesn't have 5 different ways to say this.
Yeah.
If there's something honest about just trying to talk about the sun or the shape of the sign or, you know, like it's more like, hey, I'm trying to just like connect with you.
Yeah.
And it's not so much about how I'm saying it or I don't have any ulterior motives other than to connect or than to like create a feeling of camaraderie. And I think that kind of speaks to what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Like when your friends started speaking English, there's almost like this honesty to it because like they're going to say it in one, you know, it's not going to have like 6 different meanings that you could imply.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like very candid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just honest and straightforward.
And funny, like the mistakes I try to tell my friends who are second English, like as a second language speakers, I'm like, no, like the mistakes are the best part. Like I hear people speaking like me all the time, but the errors, then we just get to laugh. And that's my favorite thing in the world is to laugh.
Yeah, totally. It's really all about confidence, honestly, or even just faking it. Just trying and trying not to care. It's a hard thing to do. It really is. But it seems like you were able to do it to some degree, to just kind of like be like, are we swearing or should I say frick it?
No, you can swear.
I'm going to say frick it.
This is TVMA.
Actually, I'm going to change it, though, to frick it.
Frick it.
Like, yeah, it seems like you were able to just be like, frick it, and just be like, you know what, I'm not the greatest speaker in the world, but I'm just going to give it my all.
Yeah.
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 And yeah, it is all about communication. I totally agree. And that's how you progress, is just by trying to communicate.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's fun. I think that a lot of us in this country who don't come from families that speak Spanish or have that as part of, you know, there's those of us in our communities that either grew up speaking Spanish, they have parents that speak Spanish, or they're in communities, they grew up going to school with friends whose families speak Spanish, who get to absorb it, you know, through like osmosis, where it's very effortless growing up. You get to learn as a kid where it's just fun and easy.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of us, because we don't have the greatest language education in our public schools, we get it in a class, and then you're kind of like dependent on how good is the teacher and how much, what's the teacher's personality going to do as far as your ability to engage. And I think that the way that we introduce it in the curriculum, at least in my experience, it was like very clunky and almost like so much in education, like really ignoring basic psychology, like setting up learning as work, as something you have to like trudge through.
Yeah.
And what actually, you know, ended up making, you know, my brain able to lock onto languages was traveling, having fun, making it into a game, making it into play, but also giving myself the necessity of like, I got to figure out what time the bus leaves, you know?
Yeah.
And that's going to be imperfect, but if I can get the necessary information, then I can, you know, it turns into this cool puzzle.
Yeah.
And I feel my brain like growing in those moments of like, this is actually like really good for my brain right now that I'm struggling with this situation, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where all the most growth occurs, is when you're, you know, when it's uncomfortable and hard and you feel like you're not progressing, Yeah, I feel like there's so many parallels for me between language and music, because they're both such lifelong and like endurance games, kind of, because they're both never-ending journeys. And yeah, you know, as a second language Spanish speaker, there's only for example, or any language, there's only, you know, so fluent that you can get in your lifetime. And you know, and even in your own language, even in English, you'll never know all the words or all the different ways to say things, or like have read all the Shakespeare or have all the references or whatever. And same thing in music, like no matter how many albums you consume and how many hours you spend shedding,
you'll never be limitless. Stevie Wonder.
No, never. And it is just so limitless in both. But I think those are probably my main two passions in life. Yeah. Languages and music. And there really are so many parallels, and I think they're enduring loves for me for that reason, because they're never ending. And there's always, you can always dive in again, and you can always step away and come back, and they'll always be there, you know? Like for me, being in Mexico for 2.5 years, being immersed in the Spanish, I feel good. I feel like full of that. Mm-hmm. And I feel now here, I'm a bit more I was very in the music world down there too, but I feel a bit more immersed in my music passion here now, and that feels really good. And I know that there will come a time again in my life where my soul yearns for Spanish again, communicating in Spanish and being in Latin America or Spain or whatever.
Well, it seemed like from the outside, and feel free to expand on this, like it seemed like you went down into this town and you kind of set up shop and created this cool, this is through like little posts and snippets of video that I got to witness, but it seemed like you kind of went and set up like a super cool music scene, and you developed in some new ways, and now you're returned as this like, you know, charming prince coming back to the kingdom to, you know, like a returning hero from your campaign abroad.
Wow.
And
what an image.
Like, well, I think it's important. This is one of the things I was, you know, trying to share with my brother, which I think that like as an artist, especially with music, like if you stay in one place for a long time, everybody has seen your tricks, right? And you've also, like, you really get locked into this identity that you are in your community, which can be a huge plus, but it can also make it really hard to grow and to change and to transcend. And I think there's something really powerful about going out into the world, getting around some people that don't know who you are, and sharing your gift, and like both like, you know, like we were just saying, having to problem solve, grow, figure new things, but then you're also getting a lot of appreciation and like novelty because you're this new face, right?
Yeah.
You have a new identity that you've grown, and then you come back to your community, suddenly everyone's like, whoa, like something different, or there's this shine on you that, you know,
totally.
I'm wondering if you felt, you know, anything like that returning.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I agree. I think like in my time before going down to Mexico here in the Bay, musically, it was a little bit like I'm in such a sea of such talent and people who are being, you know, so successful. There's a lot of success, a lot of talent, a lot of just, there's a huge sea of great musicians here. Mm-hmm. And myself, who have the tendency to compare myself with others, kind of got into that a little bit. And so it was nice going down to Mexico and just being in a smaller community of people. And it was like, okay, this is, you know, these are the people we got to work with, like making connections within a small musical community, and kind of getting back a little bit more back to the joy of music, of just playing music.
Right.
Yeah, I actually don't know how relevant this is to your question, but maybe that's kind of the nature of the podcast. I think my time down there was, I view it kind of as like me cutting my teeth as a performing live in a band.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't have much experience with that, just gigging regularly, and we would have weekly gigs in the next door town, Sayulita. We would have we played maybe two to 4 nights a week, in just bars, and we played a lot of originals, but we played covers too. This is what this project was called, Iguana Comet. My friend Eli. Oh, you know Eli?
Yeah, E2. Torres.
Yeah.
My brother.
Eli Torres,
so in our little group with me and my brother, Tony always calls him E2 because
Eli Goldlink.
Because Goldlink was like the first Eli in his band, and then E-Dub came in.
And it's funny because Eli and Eli are friends too.
Exactly. They're all part of the community. So, but Torres is a beast.
Yeah. It was awesome, and so we were writing a ton together. So we were playing originals, but also covers because you got to kind of get the dancey vibes going. We were playing with this amazing Argentinian drummer, Nico, like world class. Just so good.
Nice.
And such a good harmonizer. My God. So we had a trio.
And harmonizer.
And Eli's a great harmonizer too. So
awesome.
It was really sweet. Yeah, the trio.
What kind of music?
Soul, R&B. We would play like Donny Hathaway covers, some Stevie.
Nice.
Paul McCartney, and then original stuff. But yeah, having just a trio with everyone singing is so nice to just be able to have 3 parts.
Yeah.
And only 3 people. So I feel like I just... it was to the point where I was sick of gigging, so I think in a way that's good, because I think that shows that I kind of got to a point where I was like getting maybe a little too comfortable with it, kind of the routine of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just having a lot of experience, even just setting up equipment, dialing live sound.
Doing the reps.
Yeah, exactly. Doing the reps, which I feel like is such a good place to do it, because in Mexico, in that small town in particular, there's such a, and I don't mean this in an offensive way at all or like insulting, but there's such a low barrier of entry compared to in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
When you email a venue in the Bay Area, it's like, tell me your last 3 venues you played.
What's your musical resume look like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't have one. So in Mexico, it was nice just being, walk into a bar, be like, hey, do you guys want some live music here? And they're like, yeah, can you play tomorrow? I mean, I'm slightly exaggerating, but that did literally happen a few times.
That's awesome.
That kind of thing.
I think I've found that's pretty common, like on the travel trail.
Yeah.
Like wherever you go. I mean, we were in town in San Marcos and Lake Atitlan for like 2 days. The first day that Tony goes into town by himself, he comes back that night. He's like, I joined a band, we got a gig on Saturday, It's like, because you're meeting, I think in those settings, you're meeting a lot of people that are nomadic. And when you're in a big city like this, there's a lot of people that have just put down roots and they're developing as a local musician. You have like such a hierarchy and a scene.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful to get to go to a place like that where maybe the artist community is more transient in nature.
Yeah.
And so if you are putting down roots, or you are just, there are more opportunities. It's also not so crazy expensive. So
exactly.
Is that how you were able to subsist down there, by just playing gigs?
Yeah, that, and I got California unemployment while I was down there.
Yeah.
Yep. From being a substitute teacher in Berkeley, because so I was very fortunate to kind of exercise that loophole, and so that was more than enough to be comfortable, and then gigging, was enough for me to pay rent and pay for food, so that I really didn't have to dip too much into that. So yeah, it was like, I couldn't do much saving with the money I was making gigging, but it was something, enough to kind of break even and live that lifestyle, the simple lifestyle.
Just wanted to take advantage of the beautiful
Dude,
golden
yes.
hour light.
Yeah, it's so good.
Sorry, but yeah, dude, that's dope. I love, despite all the, the many mixed feelings about the last couple years and the way that things were handled and things went, one of the really positive outcomes of the pandemic and the shutdown and all this, despite all the obvious hardships, businesses closing, people losing their livelihoods, I do think one of the positives that I really try to focus on was the space that it gave a lot of creatives and artists to, maybe work on some things that they didn't quite have the bandwidth for beforehand. How many new projects, this podcast being one of them, were started because people got the unemployment or got a chance to sit back, reevaluate.
Yeah.
What are my priorities? What do I want to do?
Yeah. I was feeling kind of guilty about the getting unemployment while being down there. And then I met various people from the U.S. who were in the same boat, living down there. And so, it was... I was able to clear my conscience and be like, you know what, I will accept the government's free money.
Of course.
There's plenty to go around, and certainly, much more could have gone around. But
of course.
Yeah.
And it's not like you were just sitting around playing Xbox and drinking rum, you were furthering the global consciousness on an artistic level.
Oh man, I don't want to create any illusions about what I spent most of my time doing down there, because gigging was at night, but I didn't have a day job. So, I mean, small beach town, I did a lot of nothing. I did a lot of chilling at the beach, swimming in the ocean, walking through the jungle, chilling at my apartment, doing nothing.
Right, but as an artist, doing nothing. This is the thing that I think that living in the Bay, this place, this hive of frenetic activity that's become so grid-minded, where everything's on a spreadsheet schedule.
Yeah. We
think of that time, it's I was doing nothing. No, actually what you were doing was living a really grounded life, exploring yourself, nature, finding inspiration, and also giving your body and your mind the necessary downtime to go out and be intensely creative, which requires a ton of that. It takes a lot of brain power and a lot of energy to create stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's
true.
One of the hardest things about being an artist in this part of the world is that we're surrounded by people that are using software to optimize their productivity. They're thinking in this what do I do with my 60 hours a week? Every minute needs to be accounted for. And if I'm not at the gym, then I got to be eating highly nutritious meals. And if I'm not doing that, then I need to be meditating. And I have 10 minutes to meditate so I can clear my mind. So that, it's that whole way of being is pretty insane.
It is. And I honestly am pretty far on the other end of the spectrum, but I often wish that I or strive to have more of that, a healthy amount of that.
Yeah.
Because I need that. And it's easy for me for my default setting to be kind of, if I don't create structure for myself, then it's easy for me to, just kind of be very flow through the day.
Totally.
And see what happens, which is great. I love it. But it's not an everyday thing, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all have to develop that own balance in our lives. I know for me, coming to my current spot, which is I've kind of hit this nice middle ground where I'm actually really pretty productive in my life, but I still have a lot of slow downtime.
Yeah.
And I had to come to a place where I started to, at first I felt a lot of shame around like a day where I did nothing,
Yeah.
you know, where I was like, oh, I'm such a schmuck.
Yeah.
And I had to change the relationship with that time and recognize how tightly connected to the days where I do a shitload of stuff those days are. Like now I see it as like, oh, on a day, like I'm usually now I have to like really work, like I have to focus on not doing anything.
Yeah.
Because I'll spend like hours like doing like productive stuff that's not earning me money, but it's like building towards the stuff that will help me earn an income or further my art. So like the days where I actually do nothing, I almost have to like set that intention that like, no, today I'm going to read my book. And those are actually pretty rare.
And when you're reading your book, you're not doing nothing,
Totally.
By the way.
Yeah, totally, exactly. And when you travel, you start to see, I think it gives people the opportunity to step outside of like, of that normal schedule.
Yeah.
And because it's much easier to have those days where I mean, you see a lot of people, they go to a country and before they've even landed, they're like, have their whole itinerary planned out, right? So they're already working from the moment they get on vacation. Like, well, we got to go by 3 p.m. We got to take a shuttle. We got to go see these ruins. We're going to stay there for an hour. Then we're going to come. We're going to eat at this restaurant, you know. And then
like, we're going to have 2 hours of chill time when we get back but only 2 hours, okay?
Right.
And we have to be chilling.
Yes. And then you see the inevitable nervous breakdown that happens with those dynamics when life comes in and it's like, oh, the bus, you missed the bus. There's not one till tomorrow.
Yeah, or we're in a group and some people don't want to
exactly
do that.
And so I think like that is a beautiful part of the experience is being confronted with those moments. I remember when I was traveling India, I had this whole itinerary planned and I got so stressed trying to hold to it that I lost sight of where I was, that I was actually doing exactly what I needed to be doing right there. And I had this epiphany, this moment where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like packing my bags and leaving this place, and this is actually where I want to be. Mm-hmm. But I'm holding, I was like, nobody's holding me to this itinerary but myself, and it's actually hurting me, making me feel bad. Like, I'm just going to throw it out. And once I did, like this wave of relief washed over me, and I realized like it changed fundamentally, like how I think about time and those days. And, I think that it's important that especially as creatives, as artists, that we recognize the importance of days off, of having a day that's not at all attached to our ambition.
Yeah.
There's a great Questlove quote from this documentary. He's talking about why the Roots are a successful band. And he says, you don't want to know the secret to the Roots' success? I'll tell you right now. He's like, any band out there, feel free to take this, because this is why I think we've stayed together all these years and why we've been able to do this thing. He said, in the beginning, we set aside one day of the week. Sunday was band day. Sunday, we don't play any music. We don't do any band work. We go over to the homie's house. We barbecue. We put on the game, and we just chill. And we hang out, and we joke, and we laugh. We're not focusing on tickets. We're not focusing on promotions. Yeah. We're not focusing on learning songs or improving. It's just getting together and reminding each other like that we all love each other and that we're friends. And I think that that's really important. And whatever version of that, however you got to package it up as an artist, we all need our version of that in our lives.
Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah, that one stuck with me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Quest.
Yeah. It's so true. You gotta cultivate that band dynamic, for sure. It's as important as, well, no, it's not quite as important as the music, but they do kind of go hand in hand, I think. I'm reading this book Lorenzo lent me, which is a autobiography by Maurice White, the Earth, Wind, and Fire founder and kind of lead man. And he was talking about how at a certain point they were already pretty successful. I think it was 1975 or 1976. And he brought on these horn players who he had known them in his youth when Maurice was a little bit more timid. And at that point in his earlier life, they were kind of like above him. They were kind of like mentors to him and taught him his confidence and stuff. So when he brought them on his successful band, they kind of assumed that was still going to be the dynamic. And so they had a really tough time between him and the two new horn players who he had known before. They just never really were on the same page about the dynamic. But there's a point where he says, but the live shows were so much better musically because of them that there was no doubt about whether like the musical effectiveness and impact would be affected by the offstage tension, which I think is not always the case. Mm-hmm. But I think when there's such musical harmony, you can make that sacrifice to a certain degree.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also like it creates this pressure cooker of a situation, right? Where you're like, there's something about performance when there's a little bit, it's like they talk about like flow state, when there's a little bit of stress applied or a little bit of tension applied, it can like push people to transcend.
Yeah.
And I think any good musician who's achieved, there's a tendency sometimes to fall into complacency.
Yeah.
Because you've got a working formula or whatever. It's one of the things, shout out to the Honey Drops that I think that like Lesh does really well, is keeps this like rotating cast of talent coming in and performing with the band, because it makes the band sound better, but I think he also has this intuitive perspective of like, hey, this is going to make me push myself more. If I bring someone on stage, if I bring a Tom on with his clear, beautiful voice, like now I got to be on my shit too, because it's easy to fall into that pattern that like you're not pushing anymore. You're like resting on your laurels, or
absolutely. And kind of related to what we were talking about, Lesh always, I feel like everyone that he brings on is such a good person.
Right. Yeah, the
There's
personality.
because it really is so important. And when I read that little snippet in the Earth, Wind, and Fire thing, I was like, I think I would have a hard time with that. Mm-hmm. But like they were just at such a high level where,
right,
the music, there's playing in stadiums, the music needs to take precedence.
Totally. And it's also a different era, right? Like where I could see back then the style of communication would make it harder to like address that particular issue with nuance. Whereas now, like a generation later, we have a lot more language to talk about that dynamic, to where like in a similar situation, you could be like, hey, like, you could kind of like address that dynamic and be like, you guys are like welcome and stoked, but also like, if it's causing issues off stage, maybe that's something that can be talked about because there's we have more language these days than we did back then.
What do you mean we have more language these days than we did back then?
I just think that like as we've continued to study psychology and sociology, and there's like a more nuanced understanding of the way that people interact and communication dynamics.
Yeah. Like people like being honest and communicating directly is becoming like a trend.
Right.
Which I fully support. I think it's a great one.
Yeah, and we're still, I don't think that what I've come to see is like, it's not even that we're better. I think most people are still pretty novice communicators.
Absolutely, myself included.
Yeah, like I got a degree in it. I still suck at times, like I'm still trying to figure out how to be better. But and so I think that like in previous eras, there was still a lot of really deep communication going on.
Yeah.
But it was with almost like cruder tools, or with like you could say something with a look that would convey a certain message. These days we have a lot more like actual physical language to talk with nuance about feelings. And I'm not saying, I don't think it's like across the board a better thing. I just think it's more, it's like before we had 12 colors on our paint easel. Now we have 64 colors on our paint easel.
I agree. And I actually, now that you say that, also think that I think I kind of want to retract what I said about like, well, not that we're not on a trend, hopefully, for like communicating more effectively, but like I think also with the increased vocabulary that we have, there's kind of also more of a trying not to step on each other's toes thing, or beating around the bush that happens, because there's so many different ways to say it.
Right.
Also, that kind of ties into what we're talking about speaking in a second language. You're just so direct.
Mm-hmm.
But I think before the internet, people probably communicated more bluntly and more directly with each other, and probably got less offended by things.
Definitely.
And so I think hopefully we're like working our way back towards a more like direct communication with one another, and not so much of like a being afraid of each other and like just walking by each other and not acknowledging each other. Two animals always sniff, two dogs are always going to sniff each other's butts. Two cats are always going to acknowledge each other, and so on and so forth. And it's crazy how many humans walk around and just
don't sniff each other's butts.
Exactly.
You heard it here, folks first. Tom's advocating for butt sniffing as the new social commencement of activity.
You heard it here first. Hobart twisted my words into what he just said. So
no, but I think the thing that most excites me about where we're getting to with our communication is, as more and more people are starting to like do the work of understanding how their mind works, or how their emotions work, or what sort of trauma they're like, the more that we understand those and our triggers, I think that more and more people are taking ownership over like their own agency and their emotional reactions. So that when someone upsets them or offends them, they can be like, that's my shit. Like some of it is the way that you communicated, and I can try to communicate about that. But I have like also my own responsibility of how I responded in that moment that I have to work on. Even just to, how nice is it when you do have an uncomfortable situation and the other person's like upset, but they're like, hey, some of this is my shit. Yeah. And I'm working on it. Sorry. Yeah. Trying to do better. Trying to get better at it. Yeah. That's all as humans we really want, is just to see that people are trying. Yeah.
And how nice is it when you get all worked up in your head about having to say something that you want to say that's hard to say because it's so direct and honest. And then when you say it, it's just it's received so easily and like lovelily.
Yes.
That it's like, oh, it really can be that easy to just say what's real.
Yeah, that process of agonizing over a difficult conversation. Yeah. And then the feeling of relief when on the other end when it like isn't actually that big of a deal. Yeah. Or you're like, that's right, you are awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason why we're friends. I see it now, Like,
yep.
For sure. Yeah. It's great that the people are, we're all a bunch of funky animals, but there's a lot of love, and when people are at their best, it's the best,
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite things is like when people I know well are just are doing something that's very characteristic of themselves. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just those moments when, like, your friend blank is being very blank. Like, George is being so George right now. Or what he just did was so George. Yeah. I just like when people act characteristically. And I also like when they act uncharacteristically. That's fun, too. Kind of being out of character. Hobart is currently adjusting the cameras and checking the light levels. How are we doing?
Trying to maintain a level of professionalism on here.
Yeah, how's it looking? We're losing light.
I mean, you look great, as always.
Well, I'm catching the better light, I guess, right?
You know, I feel like the cool thing about doing it at this time is that you, the audience, I'm going to break the fourth wall. You as the audience are getting to experience an elemental, as the conversation ages, the light is failing too, the light is aging, the day is aging. And so I think, like, maybe this will be a good topic to end on.
Yeah.
Which is, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, you've returned to the Bay, and just where you are at this moment as an artist. What are the projects that you're excited about?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that you want people to know about that you're engaged in?
Yeah.
Tom's a great, amazing musician. For those of you that don't know, one of the titans of the current Bay Area hip music scene.
Wow. Thank you.
Voice of an angel.
Right now, I actually have a 3-song EP that's all ready to go. Sick. I just got the artwork.
Hell yeah.
And I did that with that drummer that I mentioned that I was playing with in Mexico, Argentinian guy named Nico.
Okay.
He also produces, and so it's like a kind of home studio. We recorded those songs in his spot. And so that's coming sometime soon, before the end of the year for sure. And in addition to that, I also have 5 songs recorded that have yet to be produced or mixed, but that'll be, I think, kind of once I finalize this 3-song EP, I'll move on to mixing, or not mixing myself, but figuring out the mixing and producing for those songs. And to be honest, as I think any creative person can relate to, by the time you get to release the project that's ready to be released, you're so ready to move on to the next thing.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, I wouldn't write those songs. I still love the songs, but you just get to a point where, like, I wouldn't write those songs today. Mm-hmm. And I really want to get these things moving so that I can kind of clear space internally for, like, what's to come after these things that I've already recorded. And these things were both recorded in Mexico, so it's kind of like a relic of that time.
That's kind of one of the paradoxes, I think, especially with music. I know my brother talks about this all the time, is like, by the time you learn the song and you articulate your ideas and you practice it to the point where you're, like, ready to share it with the world, the magic moment's already kind of passed for you, where you're, like, super turned on by it.
Yeah.
And so you're sharing it and everyone's hopefully loving it and getting high off of it, but you've already, like, kind of reached the crest and now you're on the other side.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a practice. I think you could probably practice that appreciation, and there's probably also a way now. I would be curious if there's a way, now that we have all these platforms and methods of, it's never been easier to be the home studio, content creator, however you want to do it. I would wonder if there's a way now to have things dialed as a musician, where you're, like, sharing the stuff that you're most high on in that moment.
Yeah.
if that's even makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I think there is a way to do that. I think it's generally achieved in more short form, in snippets.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, I think it is possible to stay on top of it, but it just requires more time and more dedication and
discipline.
Yeah, a lot of discipline to stay on top of it like that. But yeah, I'm in the past I've worried too much about releasing things and how to release them, and I just want to release music at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to continue writing music and performing it and putting it out there, and kind of try not to overthink it too much.
Do you have a project right now that's kind of your main project you're working on as an artist, musician?
I mean, kind of I guess, just kind of getting back into my solo project and thinking about gigging around the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
I have a desire to be gigging and to play with a band. So some live performances feel like I would like that.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like they're on the horizon. And some stuff is shaping up for the fall.
Do you have a current band that you're gigging with, or
no?
Just
but I have
alchemy?
some people in mind, and I think I want to try to book a date first,
mm-hmm.
and then go from there.
Nice.
Just rather than the other way around.
A reason for assembly.
Yeah, exactly. So that sounds nice.
Hell yeah.
I feel like that's coming. Yeah. And honestly, I want to have a band with Lorenzo and Oliver.
That'd be sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, the song that you and Oliver wrote together was more of that, please. We need more of that stuff.
Or at least we're, right, because, the three of us all write, and we always, love each other's ideas,
mm-hmm.
and just
good
works
musical
well.
chemistry.
Yeah. And, so I'd love to, explore that more, write and record some stuff with them. Yeah.
Well, we got to do some more videos when you guys write some more music.
Oh, yeah.
Because that Power of Family, for all of you out there listening, go check out the Power of Family on YouTube. That was
recorded right here.
Recorded right here in this room.
This is where a book girl was sitting.
This is where I'm sitting right where Book Girl was sitting. Shout out Book Girl. She made the video.
We know your name, Sophia.
Sophia, you made the video. I only got to say a couple words to you, but if I could speak through the camera, inspiration. Great job. You nailed it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely down to do more content in the future. And I guess the last thing just to wrap up on is how can people find you, connect
mm-hmm.
with you? What are the channels for more Tom Quell?
Yeah, I mean mostly any platform you can find my music, Tom Quell. That's Quell. Spotify, YouTube, Instagram is probably where I'm most active.
What's the handle?
That's tom.quell.music.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I'll throw that up too
cool.
in the podcast.
Thank you.
People can see it visually.
Yeah. I think that's mainly it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we started as fools. We're ending as cools.
Yep.
What's in your mind? Well, maybe we'll end on this. I'll end with a question.
Sure.
Who is the coolest musician in the Bay Area at this moment?
Coolest?
Let's end with some love. Let's throw some shout outs.
my God.
Let's give a rose.
Okay.
Who? Okay, maybe not the coolest, but who is an especially cool, artist, musician, creator that you want to boost, shout out right now?
Zoe Winter.
Okay.
Incredible.
Zoe Winter. Zoe,
Yeah.
we love you. You're fucking
Yes.
cool.
I just saw Zoe last night at the Feelings Parade. Also, dope. They just released an album, The Feelings Parade.
Shout
Check
out.
that shit out. And Zoe played in their band and sang killer harmonies, played keys like a frickin' boss.
Frick
And
yeah.
Frick yeah. Yep. And obviously has her own stuff, so.
Hell yeah.
Check
Go
that
check out
out.
Zoe
Yeah.
Winter as well. Check out Tom Quell. Tom, I love you, man.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I had a blast. And
Thanks for the cacao, by the way. We had a cacao ceremony prior to this. Hobart brought cacao from Costa Rica,
Guatemala.
Sorry. Okay.
No, it's all good. We had a legit cacao ceremony. I feel like I got pretty hopped up on it and put me in a really good state of mind to converse with such an esteemed gent as yourself. But yeah, man, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Had a great time. And to all you out there, thanks for watching. We love you. Mwah. Until the next one, bro. Oh, yeah. Oh, the hug. Oh.
This is where the credit music starts rolling.
Don't want to close my eyes. Don't want to fall asleep because I miss you, babe.
And I don't want to miss a thing, even when I dream of you. What is it?
The sweetest dream is not enough because I miss you, babe. And I don't want to miss a thing. Fuck yeah, dude. That's how you end a podcast.